Good afternoon. I'm Pam Strickland. I'm the founder of North Carolina Stop Human Trafficking, and I am so glad that you have joined me today. We are going to discuss an overview of the anti-human trafficking movement in North Carolina. I would invite you, if you would like to put in the chat your name and your organization and where you're located, so you might find a friend in the chat box. And also, if you have questions as we're going along, if you want to put those in the Q&A, I will stop periodically, and my colleague Vanessa is going to help me by keeping an eye on that, and she'll let me know if there are any questions in there. So again, welcome, and we're going to get started. So the first thing I wanted to do is share with you some exciting news. NC Stop Human Trafficking is celebrating our 15-year anniversary this year. So we're also, of course, celebrating the fact that it's January, which means it's Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So lots of things to celebrate. I first wanted to tell you a little bit about us in case this is your first webinar with us. Our vision is a state free of human trafficking, and our mission is creating communities actively working to abolish human trafficking. And just to clarify, when we say communities, we don't necessarily mean a geographic community. It could be a professional community like law enforcement, for instance, or it could be a school community. So we hope that whatever community that you're a part of, that you will work with others in that community to begin working to abolish human trafficking, if you're not already. So the ways that we go about doing our work is, first of all, education. And the education that we do the most of, and really where our heart is educating professionals. Now, of course, we educate community members and do awareness events, but we all know that victims very rarely self-identify. So it's really important that the professionals who encounter these at-risk people know the signs and know how to identify a potential victim of human trafficking. And so we spend a lot of our time doing that. We're also incredibly engaged in collaboration. This is such an incredibly huge issue. There's no way that any one organization or group could hope to do the work alone. We all have to pitch in and do it together. We're also engaged in policy and legislative work at both the state and federal level. And lastly, we're engaged with promoting the idea of buying and selling fair trade certified products. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that, that is an actual certification. It means slave-free, child labor-free. The people who harvested or made the product with that logo on it were all paid a fair living wage, no matter what country they're in. And we believe that's human trafficking prevention. So people always want to know what the numbers are. How many victims do we have in North Carolina? And the honest answer is we don't know. There is no central data collection point in North Carolina for human trafficking victims or for the perpetrators. that is something that we have been advocating for with our legislators for a few years now. And so if there are any of you who are friends or colleagues with legislators, I would just invite you to mention this to them, that there needs to be one place where all the law enforcement agencies, where all the service providers, where all the different social service organizations report in, we touched 10 human trafficking victims this month. Just so we could begin to get a handle on what the prevalence is. The numbers that we do have are these on this slide, and this comes from the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And for what they are, I mean, they're completely accurate. This is cases that are confirmed from calls from North Carolina. So you see that in 2023, there were 235 cases that were confirmed as a result of calls or other contacts from North Carolina. They also accept text and emails. And you see that 394 victims were involved, meaning that multiple cases involved multiple victims. Now, the reason that we have to just be really careful about how much significance we give to these numbers is that this does not include the calls that went into any local law enforcement, like your local police department or sheriff's office. Doesn't include the calls that went into the North Carolina SBI. Doesn't include calls to FBI or ICE or any other federal agency. And so those are all the law enforcement agencies. And it also doesn't include calls to DSS or domestic violence shelters or sexual assault agencies or even human trafficking agencies. So this is just calls or contacts to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And you can see that based solely on that, North Carolina is ranked number 9 in the country as of 2023. So I thought it might be interesting to see what the venues are that were reported. The ones on the left are from 2021, and the ones on the right are from 2023. And you see that there was a bit of a change. For one thing, there was a less people reported the venue in the most recent one. And whereas before, our top ones were the illicit massage businesses, hotels and motels, and pornography, now our top ones are residence-based commercial sex, online ads where the actual venue, the location is unknown, and escort or delivery services. So there has been some change in that over those 2 years. So I wanted to give an example of residence-based sex trafficking. And some of you may have seen this in the news. This is a very recent case where a woman had met someone on Snapchat several months ago. And then after a period of time, I guess they continued to talk, she agreed to visit the man at his home in December, and those two and another person did cocaine together. And I'm assuming after she did the cocaine and not before, they then said, you need to pay for your share of it. And she didn't have the money and was held in that home and forced to have sex with multiple men over several days, ostensibly to pay back the money for this cocaine. She was badly beaten. She was finally somehow able to call 911. And these men were charged with attempted murder, kidnapping, human trafficking, promoting prostitution. And if you want to read more about this, you can look this up online. So another case of residence-based, I thought this was interesting because it kind of links residence-based and the massage business. This is a picture of a house and it's in a residential area, where a massage parlor came in. Um, the neighbor had noticed that there were really unusual hours at this place, and that's certainly a sign of an illicit massage parlor. I mean, your normal therapeutic massage person is going to have some pretty regular hours, like 9 to 5 or 10 to 6 or, something like that. And these massage businesses would be open much later than that. Um, Neighbor also noticed that the employees never went home, meaning that they actually lived in the same place they worked, which is a red flag as well for being a place where human trafficking is happening when the employees live and work in the same place. So law enforcement raided this place and were able to arrest 2 people. So we looked at the venues for sex trafficking, and I wanted to look at the venues as well for labor trafficking. And you see that there's a change here as well. Whereas in 2021, the highest number that actually gave the venue, and you can tell from these numbers that most of them we don't have the venue for, because these numbers are so low. Before it was domestic work, housekeeper, nanny, that kind of thing. And now the highest one is restaurant and food service, and domestic work is second. And, for North Carolina to not have in its top 2 or 3 agriculture is it's pretty shocking. So, and again, just to reiterate, these are just calls that come into the hotline. So this is not necessarily representative of all of the labor trafficking that's going on in North Carolina. So I thought we would look briefly at some of the demographic information. On top, again, is 2021, and on the bottom is 2023. The first year we didn't have enough data to even list the ages. In 2023, we see that the majority are adult victims, but there's a significant minority of minors. Both years, the vast majority of victims are female, although the number of males grows in this one. I would say in both of these, we don't have enough people, again, reporting their citizenship status to really say. But of those that reported, slightly more were foreign nationals in 2023 than were U.S. resident or legal permanent resident. So I'm going to stop here for a second before we go on and ask Vanessa if there are any questions in the Q&A.
Yes, ma'am, we have one question, and that is from Juliana Montiel. She's from La Noticia, and she's asking, for press purposes, will this recording be available on the website?
It will be available on our YouTube channel.
Thank you. That is the last question.
Okay, thanks. So we're going to move and look at human trafficking laws and law enforcement involvement. So I'm going to try and go through this pretty quickly because I know talking about laws is not that exciting. But I did just want to give us a little bit of an outline of what the legal situation is regarding human trafficking. The only federal law I'm going to mention is the very first one here that was passed in 2000. The Trafficking Victims Protection Act was passed in 2000. This was the very first time that human trafficking was defined federally, and the first time that monies were set aside for victim services, and that consequences were provided for the perpetrators. So it takes North Carolina, 9 years before we have a state statute on human trafficking. And our definitions fairly closely mirror what the TVPA had. One problem with our state statute is that there was a conflict between our human trafficking statute and our prostitution statute, in that our prostitution statute didn't mention age at all. And our human trafficking statute said that if you're under 18 and in the commercial sex industry, you're a victim of human trafficking. And so what that meant is that law enforcement who had not been trained in the human trafficking statute could still be arresting minors for prostitution instead of treating them as a victim of sex trafficking, as the human trafficking statute would allow for. So it took 4 years for us to correct that in 2013. And as of that year, there's no statute under which you could arrest a minor for being a victim of sex trafficking. Thank goodness. In 2015, the legislature decided that we should begin to educate young people about this issue and mandated that it be that sex trafficking prevention and awareness be included in our sex ed curriculum. We and every other anti-human trafficking group thinks this is a great idea. Unfortunately, there was no enforcement mechanism written into the statute. So whether or not a school is actually teaching that curriculum is pretty much left up to the individual school or school district. In 2017, the General Assembly began to require that certain establishments post a poster with the hotline number on it. Again, a very positive thing. Places that were required are places like emergency departments and clinics, anywhere that has an ABC license. Transportation centers like bus stops and airports and train stations, rest stops, and others. So there were a number of places that began to be required to post this hotline number. However, again, there's no enforcement mechanism in any of them. So it's very hit or miss. I am sure that you all can think of times that you've been somewhere that sells alcohol and you didn't see that poster, or have been in an airport. I've been in airports where I have seen the poster, and I've been in airports where I haven't. So with no enforcement mechanism, it's just hit or miss, really. In 2019, the General Assembly passed legislation making it easier for survivors of human trafficking to get their records expunged. What we know is that victims are very often required to break laws other than the obvious one of prostitution when they're under the control of a trafficker. And when they come out of that situation, it's really hard for them to make a fresh start when they've got this long criminal record. And so it's a great benefit to be able to get your criminal record expunged. I want to be clear that it's still difficult. It's still time consuming, but they made it a little bit easier. Also in 2019, the legislature required school personnel to be trained. So back in 2015, they required it to be a part of the sex ed curriculum for the students. And now in 2019, they're requiring school personnel to be trained. They're required to have 2 hours of child sexual abuse and child sex trafficking training every 2 years. So that's kind of the background. I wanted to give you some more current information that's really good statutes that the legislature passed just last year. So in House Bill 591, they actually created an offense for sextortion. And, our organization and many others have been talking about that for a number of years, but we did not have a state statute that had an actual offense for it here in North Carolina. And so there's now sexual extortion and aggravated sexual extortion, and the aggravated one is for when the victim is a minor. This bill also made it illegal to possess obscene material that depicts a minor engaging in sexual activity, even if that minor doesn't actually exist. And this is important because there's so many AI generated images now, and a person can be charged with obscene material, even if it's AI generated. The bill also made it very clear that consent is not a defense to solicitation of a child. You can't say, oh, the kid said it was okay. A child cannot consent to being sexually exploited. And this last one is that it created an offense. Basically, it created an offense to solicit the parent or guardian of someone under 16 in order to commit an unlawful sexual act. So it's unlawful to contract basically with the guardian or caregiver of a minor for the purpose of purchasing sex. All right. House Bill 971. This is something that our organization and others, and we'll talk more about that, worked on. And we just consider it a huge victory that solicitation of prostitution was changed from a misdemeanor to a felony. And the group that really kind of led that charge was the legislative team from the North Carolina Demand Reduction Task Force. And I'll give you a little bit of background on that. The Demand Reduction Task Force folks were talking to, including myself, were talking to law enforcement across the state and encouraging them as a demand reduction tactic to arrest the people who are trying to buy sex. And what we were told by law enforcement is that these operations take a lot of personnel to implement and take a whole lot of time to plan. So they're very resource intensive. And they would say to me, at the end of the operation, if it's completely successful, what I have is a handful of misdemeanors. And my DA may not even prosecute them. And, knowing that my chief is not going to let us, my chief or my sheriff, is not going to let us invest that kind of time and money into an operation like that. And so my colleagues and I go, okay, seems like we need to get something changed here. And so we went to the legislature and we told them this. And many of them acted completely shocked that the purchase of sex was only a misdemeanor. And so we got a lot less pushback in talking to individual legislators than I had anticipated at any rate. And it was introduced as a part of this bill and passed. And as of December 1st of this past year, December 1st of 2024, the solicitation of prostitution is a felony. So that was an exciting win for the demand reduction team. Other things that this bill does is it requires hotels and rental property staff to receive human trafficking training to be able to identify a potential victim, requires hotels and rental properties to post the human trafficking hotline. It prohibits the viewing of pornography on government networks or devices, which as a taxpayer, I certainly appreciate. And it expands human trafficking training for county DSS employees, which is certainly a very positive thing because we know that the Child Protective Services employees that are a part of DSS are definitely encountering victims of human trafficking, and they certainly need to be trained in it. So, how much does law enforcement get trained on human trafficking? Um, Back in 2012 is the first time that we, as a state, began having human trafficking as a part of basic law enforcement training. And unfortunately, they only get 2 hours. Um, in 2016, knowing that anyone who took basic law enforcement training before 2012 hadn't had any human trafficking training, they had a mandatory class for every law enforcement staff person in 2016 had to take 2 hours of human trafficking training, and we haven't had any mandatory training since then. So a lot's changed in that time. So I think it would be really helpful for law enforcement at large to receive some more training. Now, to be fair, there are other more in-depth trainings out there available, and some agencies do send, a portion of their staff to it, usually one or two people, like a detective or two, to those more in-depth trainings. So one of the ways that law enforcement can receive some training in human trafficking is by attending CIT training, Crisis Intervention Team training. And as you can see, the goal of it is to improve outcomes of encounters with people experiencing a mental health crisis. Basically, it's to train law enforcement and sometimes emergency personnel, EMS folks, to recognize that there's something going on here, aside from like intentional criminality, right? That there's a mental health issue, and that we need to help. We need to de-escalate the situation. So we are blessed to have been a part of CIT training for a number of years. And most of this training now is being done by Vanessa Berriman, our training and outreach coordinator. In 2024, she went to 17 different counties and trained 481 law enforcement, correction, and EMS employees. So we'll hope we do at least that this year, and hopefully even more. But this is a really valuable training. It's a week-long training, and then of course the human trafficking piece is a small part of that. Something that is brand new that Trillium is doing now, that they're piloting, is instead of crisis intervention specific to law enforcement, it's called community crisis intervention training. And this is an 8-hour class instead of a week-long class like the other one. Folks that are 18 and older can attend, community members can attend. But the emphasis is on getting folks like school staff and social workers and other professionals like that might come into contact with the victim to come to this, although community members can also attend. So as I said, this is a pilot. So far, Vanessa has participated in 3 of these and has trained 88 professionals. So the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation has a special human trafficking unit. Casey Fillinger is the assistant special agent in charge of that. They have, he shared with me recently, they have 5 agents to serve all of North Carolina. Last year, these 5 agents worked over 80 human trafficking related tips and cases. And the criminal charges that resulted included 3 felony counts of human trafficking of an adult victim, 3 felony counts of sexual exploitation of an adult victim, 3 felony counts of promoting or advancing prostitution, and 3 felony counts of profiting from prostitution. And he shared, of course, that many of the cases are still ongoing. So now I want us to hear live and in person via Zoom from Kevin Roughton, who is the special agent in charge with the SBI, but he is the commander of the North Carolina Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. So I am going to stop sharing my screen so that he can share his. And welcome, Kevin, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Pam. I appreciate you having me. It's great to have the opportunity to talk about internet crimes against children. Not that that's a great topic to talk about by any means, because ideally we wouldn't have to talk about it, and yet we do. So thank you for including me in this. There is certainly a significant overlap between what we do in the internet crimes against children world and the human trafficking world. So I do want to share my screen. Let me select the appropriate one here, hit share. Hopefully that is coming through. And we'll walk through just a few things. I've got some numbers to share with you, as well as kind of what's been going on. And you'll hear me refer to ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children. So what's happening in the ICAC world here recently. I will put my contact information on the screen as well. If you need to get in touch with me, there's an email address there as well as telephone number. So if there's something ICAC related, feel free to reach out to me. So the Computer Crimes Unit is the lead ICAC agency for North Carolina. We are not the only agency for sure. And as you'll see in a minute, we have about 250 local affiliate partners, police departments, sheriff's departments, that we work regularly with in investigating ICAC cases. There are 61 coordinated task forces across the country. So kind of what that looks like is pretty much one per state. Higher population states, California has 5 different task forces, Texas has 3, Florida has 3, but for the most part, every state has one designated lead task force, and for North Carolina, that's the SBI. So we get the bulk of the tips that come in, and we lead the task force for the state. This is what our team at the SBI looks like. So you'll see that we have agents spread across the state. Color-coded map there shows you that each agent is responsible for anywhere from around 6 to as many as 10 or 12 counties. And I'll be sharing numbers with you in just a minute, and you'll understand that that is far too few for the amount of work that's out there for one agent to be covering numerous counties like this. But nonetheless, if something's going on in your area and you need to get in touch with us, these are the agents that work in those areas. Certainly, again, feel free to reach out to them, ask questions, or seek assistance. But really, again, this is not the entirety of the ICAC task force for North Carolina. That list looks a little bit more like this, to where, again, 250 police departments, sheriff's departments across the state, and we couldn't do it without them. They are the backbone of the ICAC task force. They are doing the work every day in their local jurisdictions as well, and we have to have those because, as mentioned, I'll talk about numbers. So let's look. If we go historically back between 2010 and 2019, we see a slight increase in cyber tips year over year. We'll talk about specifically what a cyber tip is in a minute, but you would kind of expect that in the technology world, in internet things, for that slight increase. But what happened in 2020 was that it took on a whole new meaning for increases year over year. So if we look at just the last few years, 2019 is what I call the last year of normal. And so in 2020, obviously we all know that COVID hit. And so when we saw our tips go from 4,900 tips to almost double that at 9,300, it was somewhat to be expected because we had taken, every kid out of a classroom and put them in a virtual learning environment. We had taken all these people out of offices and made them remote workers now. So literally there were more people online than ever before in the history of the world. And so that made sense that we would see tips go up. But the world's kind of normalized after that now, and kids are back in school, and a lot of people are back in offices, and we live a pretty normal life, just as it was pre-COVID almost. And yet tips have gone up year over year, 12,000, 18,000, 26,000 to 28,000 this past year. And the December number there is highlighted just because it was the highest month ever that we've received for the number of tips. So when I say the tips are continuing going up as recently as last month, they are continuing to go up. And people ask me, why is that? And I think there's a couple of explanations there. Number one is that there is more content out there and more people doing it. But at the same time, the service providers that report most of these tips really are doing a better job at finding it. And so they are taking a more proactive approach, which creates more reports as well. So when I talk about cyber tips, what is a cyber tip? It comes from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They have a cyber tip line that is the essentially the clearinghouse for all online exploitation or solicitation of children for the country. And so everything goes in to the cyber tip line. You'll hear me refer to NCICAC, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Everything goes to NCICAC, and then they look at the information and determine where they believe it is, whether it's in North Carolina or some other state. If it's in North Carolina, they funnel that information to us, and then we use the information that's been provided, usually an email address, a telephone number, maybe an IP address, and track down where that user is, where this actual incident occurred, and then can further that investigation from there. So when we talk about cyber tips, a lot of people believe that this is the creepy pedophiles in the deep, dark, hidden places of the internet, but that's not really true. So if we look at the numbers from just 2024, what you'll find is that 70% of our tips came from Facebook, Google, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and Twitter. Those 6 service providers made up over 70% of the tips that we received. And really out in front of that was Snapchat. They are by far the leader in the number of tips that we receive. And as you know, Snapchat is highly popular with teenagers and with kids. The old adage of 20 or 30 years ago, when you see the creepy person hanging out at the playground, they're there because they want to meet kids. That's kind of where things are with some of these service providers now, that those that are looking to victimize children are going where the children are. And Snapchat certainly is one of those most popular apps that's being used by kids and teenagers today. So the thing to remember with a cyber tip, every cyber tip relates to a potential child in danger of sexual exploitation in North Carolina. So 28,000 of those. And what we've realized is that there's hundreds and thousands of victims behind those. And that's what our work is and the work of our local task force with those affiliates to rescue over 80 kids from hands-on offenses just this past year in 2024. And again, we couldn't do it without those local partners. So the last couple things I want to share with you is what do you do to get help, or where do you go if you need to get help? And a couple of places for that is obviously the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They have a Get Help section, so you can refer someone there, or you can go there yourself if you provide services of any kind or work with youth in any way. Then you may be that resource that they're coming to looking for help. So you can educate yourself easily using their site. Or for those that need help can go there directly and get that help that they need. One relatively new service that they are offering just within the last couple of years is a service called Take It Down. And you can see the web address there, but if you go to NCICAC's homepage, you can find it from there. And it uses those it is for those times when a child has taken a picture of themselves, a nude image of themselves, and shared that with someone else or posted that somewhere, or someone else has posted that image that was shared somewhere, for them to be able to verify their identity and who they are, the fact that they are underage, They work with the National Center, who in turn reaches back out to those service providers and gets them to take the content down to get it off of their platforms. This has been a hugely successful program here in the last couple of years. So I wanted to put that information out there because a lot of times that's one of the questions we get a lot is once something has happened is how do you get that stuff removed? And so this is a new service the National Center is offering. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention in my last minute or so is sextortion. We have seen exponential growth in the number of reports of sextortion of minors. And so many of those end very, very badly when a child gets into a situation and they don't see any hope in that situation. They're being financially sextorted for thousands of dollars potentially, or else someone's going to release their explicit images. And they don't feel that there's any other way out. Across the country, we've seen dozens of suicides come from that. So we're trying to push to get the information out there about what is sextortion, but more than that, what can you do about it? What should you do if it happens to you? Because the time, when it's 12:48 a.m. and that child's sitting in their room trying to figure out what to do because they're being victimized, it's too late to get the information out then. So we need to get that out ahead of time and educate kids about what sextortion is and the resources that they may need when they get backed into that corner at the hands of somebody trying to exploit them. So with that, thank you, Pam, for allowing me to kind of talk about the ICAC in North Carolina, what's going on and what we do. And certainly reach out to us anytime that you need anything from the ICAC task force. Reach out to me or one of our agents, and we're glad to put you in touch with or come work with whoever needs to rescue a child in North Carolina. That's our goal. That's what keeps us going every day, is when we can take a child out of harm's way and change the trajectory of their life forever.
Wow, Kevin, that was a lot of information in a short amount of time. Thank you so much. We are so grateful for you being here today. And yeah, that was really helpful. And did I understand you to say that y'all had rescued 80, so you're working internet crimes against children, but you had rescued 80 children whom you were able to identify, I guess, from their images online and go rescue the child.
Correct. A couple of different ways that can happen. Certainly, when the images are shared, we track down where that came from and can ultimately go find where the image was taken or the person that took it. And we may find that they have abused that child or exploited that child, and we find that child there when we get there. The other way that happens, and what we really try to do in every case that we can, is that we go obviously investigate this from an images standpoint, but when we get there, we ask the question of our subject that we're investigating of, was this just something you did on the internet, just something stupid with pictures, or have you ever done this with a real child? And of course, they're going to tell us, no, absolutely not. I've never done this with a real child, right? So then we say, great, that's fantastic. Would you take a polygraph to that? And we use that polygraph as an investigative tool. And many times they will take that polygraph, or they'll, in advance of that polygraph, give a confession for children that they have been involved with, they've exploited, or they've molested, or they've abused in the past that weren't even in the images that were sent to us. So time over time, we're finding victims that never would have been reported and still haven't been reported that were victimized because of investigative techniques like a polygraph.
Wow. Thank you so much, Kevin. We're grateful for you and for your whole team.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right. All right. So, oops. So we heard from Kevin, who works, as a part of the State Bureau of Investigation. And so we wanted to also hear from the federal side of law enforcement. And we are so grateful to have Aaron Blondell here with us, who is an assistant U.S. attorney for the Eastern District. And her specialization is prosecuting civil rights violations, human trafficking offenses, child sexual exploitation, sexual assault, and other violent crimes. Erin, thank you so much for being with us. I am going to stop sharing so that you can share.
Hi, Pam. Are you able to hear me? This is Erin Blondell. I'm sorry I'm on the phone. I'm unable to log into the Zoom account due to some government security features. So I do have a PowerPoint, but I can't share it until, so I'm really sorry, everybody. What I will do is go ahead and give you my oral presentation looking at my PowerPoint. And Pam, I'm happy to send you my PowerPoint when this is all over so that you can share it with the group if you would like. Thank you for having me, and it is a real pleasure getting to talk to all of you about the work that we're doing here on the federal side of the House. We had a good year in 2024. It was a year of transition for those who know Brian Stephanie. He took a leave and then ultimately decided to leave the office to actually stay home with his family, and I resumed my role as our office's human trafficking coordinator. So it was definitely a year of transition for us. We did, however, have some significant victories on the federal side of the House in terms of what we've been doing. We had several major, I would say that the highlights include, we continued to build our two human trafficking task forces that we operate within the district. There's the Human Trafficking Task Force for the Raleigh-Cary area, and the Coastal Carolinas Human Trafficking Task Force that primarily focuses on the Wilmington and Jacksonville areas and environs. We meet regularly, and we've built some good cases through those task forces, and also participated in operations and other support and assistance to various law enforcement agencies on trafficking-related matters. We conducted, as we do every year, some major training, outreach, and awareness events. Every January, as you all do, we have a day of training and networking for human trafficking professionals and folks working in this space. We did that again this year. We did it last January as well, and it was and they're always quite successful. We had a specialized training and awareness event in July with our non-governmental organization partner, A21, focusing on labor trafficking, which is the first time we've done that specifically. That was here in Raleigh. It was also very well attended. I spoke to law enforcement agencies over the course of the year, including, for example, the Transportation Security Administration agents, so that they can understand what trafficking looks like and how to combat it. We also did a lot of domestic violence-focused outreach this year to try to bridge that gap between agents, investigators, and social service professionals who focus on domestic violence, and help them understand the tools and the resources that we have on the federal side, including trafficking. In addition, we did, one of our achievements of the year was we obtained a federal protective order in a case where one of my defendants that I had prosecuted a number of years ago was actually harassing two of our victims from federal prison. You might think he couldn't do that. He managed to find a way. So in what I think may have been the first case in the nation to do this, we obtained under a federal statute a protective order that prohibits him from contacting those victims while he is incarcerated in federal prison. That was very important because he is actually serving like 5 concurrent life sentences. So the usual tool that we use to prohibit contact is something you get once you're released. And so actually targeting him in BOP was unique and I think very important for victims. Finally, our office created a new unit, which we are calling the Special Prosecutions Unit, that is dedicated to victim-centered prosecutions, including human trafficking. So I am in that unit, and a couple of my colleagues are in that unit, and we have concentrated prosecutors who specialize in these types of cases in a unit so that we can do a better job leveraging our expertise and coordinating among each other to assist victims of crime, and especially victims who have undergone complex trauma. We had a number of landmark cases that were sentenced over the course of last year. United States versus Jarrell Antonio Rayford. Mr. Rayford prostituted a 16-year-old minor and violently abused her both physically and emotionally. He ultimately pleaded guilty to sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion and was given a 25-year sentence and ordered to pay $8,000 in restitution to that victim. In United States versus D'Angelo Taborn and Amani Franco, those defendants used violence, sexual abuse, coercion, and manipulation to traffic multiple adults and minors across multiple states for several years. This was a long, ongoing trafficking organization. Taborn pleaded guilty to sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion and was given a 27-year sentence. Ms. Franco pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion and received a 12-year sentence. The defendants were also ordered to pay over $32,000 in restitution. Finally, United States versus Brittany McCoy and Melody Nobles. In this case, the defendants, McCoy was prostituting Noble's 16-year-old daughter. She knew she was underage. She'd known her since she was 12. And horrifically, Nobles had actually demanded a share of the profits from her own child's trafficking. Both of these defendants ultimately pleaded guilty to sex trafficking of a minor. McCoy was sentenced to 108 months in prison and Nobles to 48 months in prison. We indicted 2 new human trafficking cases last year, United States versus Falk and Comfort, which is a case charging the defendants with sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion of an adult minor, and United States versus Shaquille Stewart, which involves multiple minor victims. We have many, many other cases under investigation. I'm not allowed to talk about them until they are indicted, but we have a very active docket of cases that we are working. We also have a number of cases pending indictment that are potentially going to trial, including a 20-count drugs and trafficking conspiracy that I will be trying in August. So those are some of the main achievements that we've done this year. I anticipate, if anything, even a busier year in 2025 now that we're through our transition from Brian back to me. And we remain extremely grateful for the partnerships that we get from local law enforcement and from you all who work in this space. We could not do without you. So Pam, thank you for having me. I am so sorry for the technological limitations of working in the government, and I appreciate you all's patience. Thanks.
Erin, thank you so much. That was exciting to hear the really high sentences that some of these perpetrators got. So thank you so much for the work that you and your colleagues do. We are grateful to you, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Okay, so this slide is showing data. You can see at the bottom there, it just goes through 2023, but it shows the number of counties on the left, the number of counties that had charges for human trafficking, and unfortunately, there's kind of a decrease the last couple of years that we have information for. And then I was just showing you the counties, the top 10 counties, and the number of cases that they had with charges, the number of charges that they had. So I'm just going to let you look at that for a second. Now, I don't want you to think, oh, thank goodness, my county's not up there. We must not have any trafficking in my county, because we all understand that the vast majority of human trafficking cases are never reported and therefore never investigated, and nobody ever gets charged. But in these counties, it shows that work is being done there, and that victims are being identified, the perpetrators are being charged. So that's exciting. So I wanted to let you know that there is a different kind of court that's happening in Fayetteville. It's called Worth Court, and I apologize. I know it's an acronym, but I do not know what all those letters stand for. But it's basically for people who have been prostituted, and they're given an opportunity to go into this program where they receive case management and referrals to all kinds of services to help them get out and stay out of a trafficking situation. They'll get counseling, they'll get job skills training, help with getting employment. So just an incredibly good program that's happening in Fayetteville. So the next thing I want to do is share with you some of the organizations that are working in our state to fight human trafficking. Before I do that, I'm going to check with Vanessa and ask if we have any questions before we move on.
Yes, I have a question from Becky Kenner. She's asking, what year is the top 10 counties? I'm sorry, what year is the top 10 counties?
It was also 2023. Anything else?
No, that is the only one.
All right. Thanks, Vanessa. All right. So we're going to look at some of the anti-trafficking organizations across the state. And the first one I mentioned to you already, the North Carolina Demand Reduction Task Force. And this one is near and dear to my heart because I and our nonprofit, I was a co-founder for this group about 4 years ago. And I wanted to, you see the list here in the red box. This is a list of the different teams that the Demand Reduction Task Force has. And if this is something that you think you might be potentially interested in, please make note of this website, ncdemandreduction.com, and go to the website, and there's a description of each one of those teams and what they do. And we would love to have you join us. And I already shared with you our big victory when I was talking about legislation, that solicitation of prostitution is now a felony as of December 1st. And that was the work of the legislative team. Another coalition here in North Carolina is the North Carolina Coalition Against Human Trafficking. Its mission is to foster connection and collaboration within the anti-human trafficking community. And its vision is a united effort to end human trafficking in North Carolina. So basically the whole role of this group is to connect people and get people out of their silos and just come together and share resources and information. And in full transparency, I will say that last year I was elected to the board of this organization and was then elected chair of the board. So it also has a special place in my heart. So I will encourage you, individuals can join the coalition, but certainly if you're part of a nonprofit or an agency or an organization that either your sole mission is anti-human trafficking work, or if a part of your mission is anti-trafficking work and you feel like connecting with other people doing that same work would be a benefit to you, please go to the website. And I'm just looking at the slide, realizing I didn't put it on here. It's NCICAC.org. So easy enough to find. Another of my favorite anti-trafficking groups is SHIELD North Carolina. SHIELD is also a co-founder of the North Carolina Demand Reduction Task Force. And you can see here from the description, they're combating human trafficking through a three-pronged approach: empowerment, prevention, and advocacy. And you see, I did remember to put their website. So if you are interested, they are always looking for folks to join in with them as well. So please visit their website. Legal Aid of North Carolina, of course, is not itself an anti-human trafficking group, but they have two departments that work a lot with human trafficking victims. The first is the Farm Workers Unit, which is helping primarily migrant farm workers who are being exploited or trafficked for labor. However, the title of it's a little bit of a misnomer because they do also assist with other types of labor trafficking, not just farm workers. And then you see the other one, Immigration Pathways for Victims. So this is immigrants who are victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking, sex trafficking specifically. They have been terrific partners over the years and have just done some incredible work bringing suits against perpetrators here in North Carolina. The North Carolina Human Trafficking Commission is a group that was created by statute. They have 15 commission members that are appointed by the governor, by the Senate Pro Tem, and by the Speaker of the House. So this is the only one of these organizations, excuse me, where the members of it are appointed by elected officials. They have 9 full-time employees. They meet every other month, and you can join their meetings either virtually or in person. Their next meeting is February 27th, and you can Google NC Human Trafficking Commission, and you'll be able to find the address if you want to go in person, or the link if you would prefer to join the meeting virtually. So the Human Trafficking Commission receives $500,000 a year from the General Assembly to disperse to nonprofits in North Carolina that are serving human trafficking victims. We, of course, think that serving human trafficking victims is incredibly important. We are a little disappointed, however, that none of the funds can be used for training, for prevention work of any kind, or for collaboration or coalition building. And so that's something that we have talked to the legislature about, and would encourage you again, if that's something you're interested in, speak to your friends there. So the Human Trafficking Commission put together a terrific tool, and they recently updated it. They have a resource directory that lists, to the best of their knowledge, every organization in North Carolina that is working on human trafficking. So it is a tremendously helpful resource, and it breaks them down by categories of whether they're a rapid response team, whether they're a multidisciplinary team, a coalition, a service provider. So it has it all broken down, and just tremendously helpful. Another resource that they have made available is several years ago, they created standards of service for people, for organizations and individuals who serve victims of human trafficking. And they did that several years ago. And then just a few years ago, they updated it to make it a little bit more user-friendly. And so again, it's a very helpful resource. particularly if you're someone who is serving victims, or if you're thinking about getting into that kind of a role to work at a safe house or provide another type of service. This is a terrific guide for what the expectations are of the level of care that your client should receive. So now I want to introduce one of the newer organizations to the North Carolina anti-human trafficking movement. This is Parker Barnes, and she is the anti-trafficking coordinator for One More Child. Thank you so much, Parker, for being here. I'm going to stop sharing so that you can.
Awesome. I'm going to start doing that. Thank you, Pam. This has been a great event. And so I have been grateful hearing from law enforcement and you kind of giving us an overlook of North Carolina as a whole. So thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Okay, I think we should be all good. So yes, as Pam stated, I am Parker. I'm the coordinator and supervisor for our anti-trafficking mobile team here in North Carolina. And like she said, we have been in North Carolina providing direct services for a little bit less than 2 years, but One More Child as a whole has a rich history of serving vulnerable children and struggling families for over 120 years, and specifically in the anti-trafficking space for 10 years. We expanded into a couple additional areas recently. And in these past 2 years, we have been able to serve 58 clients. So we provide direct services to survivors of human trafficking or those that are at a substantial risk. I love that we have talked in this conversation about prevention, hearing about internet crime, things to that extent. We can all agree, and those of us that are doing this work, is that we are trying to work ourselves out of a job. And so part of that is providing direct services for those that are verified survivors, but also providing services for individuals that we believe that are at a substantial risk. We're also able to provide services to any gender and any age of individuals. So our desire is to provide low barrier services to survivors of human trafficking and those who are at a significant risk. And we do that in our model by providing mobile free services, meaning that we bring our services directly to the client. We have some office space, but we find that transportation is a gigantic barrier for services, especially in our more rural areas. So how we navigate that is bringing our services directly to our clients. Like it stated above, we have a 24/7 crisis intervention line that is available to our community partners and also to our clients that is staffed within our 3 team members. And our desire is to continue to fill in gaps in services. Pam, you talked about the resource directory, which I appreciated. And you'll see there are many agencies in North Carolina that are providing direct services. And so we are always wanting to hear from other agencies to figure out what the gaps are and how we can uniquely work together to fill them. We currently are serving in 6 counties in the Raleigh-Durham area. I have them listed right there. We just in the past couple months have expanded down into serving Harnett and Lee County and are able to do that because we are a mobile team and are able to go directly to clients. But obviously, those are only a couple of counties out of our state. So definitely would point back to that resource directory as well. So the 2 main services that we provide our clients are advocacy services and clinical services. So we are a mighty team of 3 here in North Carolina. We have an advocate on our team whose main goal is to meet the tangible needs of our clients. I'm sure many of you on this call are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The idea that it's really hard to meet mental health needs and even these legal needs if an individual is not fed and they don't know where they're going to sleep every night. So our advocate focuses on those immediate needs, providing connections within the community, creating tangible and reachable goals with the client, such as obtaining documentation or obtaining short-term or long-term housing. Our advocate also gets to make partnerships and do trainings like this together for the importance of that work. And then the second prong of that is the clinician that's on our team. So that is individualized trauma-informed therapy. And that is what it sounds. Like I said, our clinician goes directly to our clients, providing therapy, sometimes family therapy, to navigate the complex trauma that survivors have experienced. In addition to that individual therapy, our clinician regularly provides psychoeducation to community partners, but also to the other people in our survivors' lives to explain how trauma presents itself to a teacher, or what it looks like for a foster parent to engage with a client when they have been triggered or are acting in a trauma response. So in addition to direct services, like I shared, we have capacity to assist in some additional trainings regarding just like a human trafficking 101, but also providing education on trauma-informed care, doing community outreach, addressing some of those prevention pieces that we talked about earlier, and how we prevent human trafficking from occurring. And then if you have an individual that is in need of services, or you think might be, we are always available to staff cases on a case-by-case basis. If there's a couple of red flags that you've seen and you're not quite sure if our services are the right fit, that 24/7 hotline, crisis line, is a great way to reach out to us. If you do believe there are a good fit for services, we just have a referral form that we'll fill out together and complete an intake screening tool, which will eliminate the client from having to repeat their story over and over again, and avoid that re-traumatization. Again, if it is an emergency, I would point you to that 24/7 crisis line. And then this is my contact information. Like I said, we serve those 6 counties here in the Raleigh-Durham area, but also have connections across the state. And so if you're working with an individual that you believe is at risk for human trafficking or has experienced human trafficking, even if they're not in our service area, I would recommend consulting that directory. And if you're not able to do that, reach out and we can connect you to someone that can provide services. So that was my just quick overview.
Thank you so much, Parker. That was so interesting to know what other folks are doing across the state. And we're just really grateful for the work you do. And thank you so much for being here. Our next guest is Lenore Brown, who is the Director of Human Trafficking Programs and Training at the Council for Women and Youth Involvement, which is a part of the Department of Administration of State Government. So I am going to stop sharing so Lenore can come on and share her PowerPoint. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I'm excited to be here with you all today. Happy New Year. I'm going to say Happy New Year up until February 1st. So Happy New Year to you all. And I hope that this year is great to all of us. So I wanted to share just a little bit about myself, and then I'll go forward with sharing my screen. But again, I'm really excited to be here in community with you all. My name is Kanisha Lenore Brown. So the K is for Kanisha, but I go by Lenore. I am Thank you again, Pam, for the introduction. Again, I am the Director of Anti-Trafficking Director for our program for the Council for Women and Youth Involvement. My journey in this field really began around the domestic violence sector, where I developed programming to support survivors of marital trafficking. And then from there, I transitioned into the housing justice space, focused on creating programs that address the intersectionality of homelessness and exploitation on minors. And so over the years, I really built programming that really focused on intersectionality. And so I'm really excited to share a little bit more of the programming that we have with the Council for Women and Youth Involvement that does exactly that. So if you all just give me a quick second to share my screen. Do you all see my PowerPoint?
Now we do, yes.
Okay, perfect.
And you might want to hit, let's see, slideshow maybe?
Yeah.
Mhm.
All righty. Thank you so much. Okay. So again, I don't do this work alone. I do it with an incredible woman named Sarah Michael. So Sarah Michael serves as our human trafficking program coordinator, and we will be providing training and technical assistance to grantees that are funded from the Council for Women and Youth Involvement. And so to give you all a brief overview, this program is really designed to enhance supportive services in domestic violence and sexual assault and intimate partner service providers. I like to share with individuals that the work that we do is not to add another focus area to DV and SA spaces, but what we want to really do is really empower these organizations to be able to identify the survivors of human trafficking that they're already providing services to. So the training and technical assistance provided by myself and Sarah Michael is that we de-silo the issue. We want to make sure that we're creating a coordinated response to the organizations that we are in partnership to. So with the Council for Women and Youth Involvement, we currently provide TA support to over 100 programs, but it's around 80 organizations. And so our training and technical assistance is statewide. We have training sessions focused on identifying and addressing sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Currently, we're working with organizations on really creating programming where we can have translation services. So we're also working on providing services in Haitian Creole, which is my background. We also provide in-person and virtual learning opportunities really tailored to meet the needs of our service providers. The organizations that we work with, we have organizations that have been standing for years and they already have a lot of programs implemented, and we have organizations that are new to the arena. So we want to make sure that the support and services that we provide for them are tailored to their needs. We also provide direct support to improve grantees and sub-grantees the ability to begin identifying trafficking survivors. So a lot of the organizations that we are in community with are not human trafficking focused organizations. They are DV and SA, but our goal is to really be in community and partnership with them so that we can do better intake provisions. We could do better at really identifying polyvictimizations, and so that service providers are equipped and empowered. We also provide guidance on integrating anti-trafficking practices, so into these existing models within the organizations that we are in community with.
Lenore,
Yes?
please forgive me for interrupting you. I
Yes,
don't know how many times you have changed your slide, but we are seeing just a white slide now that just says click to exit full screen. That's all we're seeing right now.
Uh-oh, okay. I don't see that on my end.
Okay, now we see, what, there for a moment, we saw your PowerPoint.
Okay, so you know what I can do is, Pam, if you don't mind, I'll just send you over the slides, and then if we do an email out, then folks can have access to it.
Okay.
Does that work? Okay,
Yep.
yes. Thank you. And I'm sorry, you all. My apologies. I'm on the road traveling right now. So again, the work that we're doing, we're making sure that we're focusing on the intersectionality. So for the Council for Women and Youth Involvement, as of last year, we were able to identify 767 individuals that have been exploited that were coming into DV and SA spaces. Tomorrow, we're going to be launching on our website access for training and technical assistance and partnership. So we don't want to only just be in community to the grantees that we provide services to, but we want to make sure that we we are in community with you all and a lot of other organizations. And so through our site, you will all have access to really kind of reach out to us if you would like to focus on collaboration or even possible training to your team members and the communities that you all serve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lenore. Did I understand you to say that that DV and SA agencies in North Carolina had identified 787
767.
human trafficking victims?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all
you.
that, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you all for having me.
And last but certainly not least, we have Amber Moss, who is the Project Fight Program Manager for the Salvation Army in Raleigh. For those of us who are old timers in the anti-human trafficking movement, you will remember Project Fight from a few years ago. And hopefully, like myself, you will be delighted that it is being restarted. So Amber, I am going to stop sharing so that you can share.
Thank you so much, Pam. I appreciate that. And thank you for the introduction. Let me just share my screen with you all. And please let me know if you're able to see. Are you guys able to see?
Yes, now we see.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time and attention. I'll be brief, but I do want to just share a little bit of information about the relaunch of Project Fight. My name is Amber Moss, and I am the new project coordinator for Project Fight. We are an extension of the Salvation Army here in Wake County. So yeah, like Pam said, initially Project Fight had been around since 2011. And they received several, I would say definitely over 400 referrals and serviced at least about 80% of those. Some were weeded out to not be identified as human trafficking per se. It could have been contributed towards domestic violence or some other entity, but this particular program is catered to just human trafficking or labor trafficking victims. But just to fast forward, I know the program had gotten taken over by the divisional headquarters, which is in Charlotte, North Carolina. And when COVID hit, of course, a lot of programs struggled. And so Project Fight was one of those programs that, struggled to stay afloat. But needless to say, on a lighter note, we are back up and running. So I want to just at least mention that. Now, here is our Project Fight Crisis Hotline. I just wanted to put that up there just so you all would have that. And the way it works is we accept all calls 24/7 from law enforcement and any of our referring partners. And then we also accept our referrals through our email as well. So it's a shared email, and myself and two of my case managers have full access to those. So there's a couple methods in the way in which we receive referrals. So of course, Project Fight stands for free and individuals gripped by human trafficking. And so that is our vision. We want to free individuals who have been gripped by human trafficking, whether it's sex trafficking or labor trafficking. That is the vision that we are trying to obtain. And our mission is to identify and serve victims and survivors of human trafficking here in Wake County. Now, before Project Fight was a statewide initiative, but being that we are relaunching, we're starting off local before we begin to re-expand. So that is why our main focus is Wake County. But in the next 9 months to a year, we're trying to expand to some of the neighboring cities, possibly like Durham, things like that. So we are looking to definitely re-expand the program. But we do focus on providing intensive case management, crisis intervention, community awareness, and initiatives to combat the issue of human trafficking. I would say right now our biggest challenge has been trying to re-promote the program, because I know a lot of people are not aware that Project Fight is back up and running, because it just started back up in early December, late November. And that was around the holidays. And I know the Salvation Army is very big on doing, donations and things during Christmas. So we're just now really being able to promote the program and, relaunch relationships with community partners. So that is one of our biggest challenges. And as I previously mentioned, our focus is on our victims, and the primary goal is to locate and support individuals who are victims of human trafficking. I did have the opportunity to meet with Parker today in an earlier one-on-one session, and I did mention to her that I do believe we struggle as a whole with victim identification. Just trying to locate victims and getting them to speak out has been a challenge in trying to receive referrals. So that is something that I want to actually get better at, trying to identify some of the victims. And even if it comes from different referring partners, or if we have to do more community outreach, or even just train other individuals in law enforcement on how to identify, I think that would be a great start to getting more clients and referrals sent our way. And some of the services that we do provide a residential program for our survivors that houses 10 to 12 victims. We don't have any restrictions, so it could be a minor or an adult. We, of course, would separate the men from the women and children, but they are able to get dropped off at any time of the day or night, and we would accept them in. We do an intensive intake assessment. Once we do feel that they have met their criteria of human trafficking, we provide any assistance from mental health care to dental care. We have an actual clinic here at the Salvation Army where we provide any type of physical care that they might need. We have clothing vouchers, food vouchers, transportation assistance. So anything that we can do to assist our victims, we try to accommodate in the best of our capacity. And then we also work on community education. That's another big one that we're working to expand on, is the community outreach and trying to create other strong partnerships with other referring agencies so that we can work together to educate the community on identifying the signs of human trafficking. Because I don't believe a lot of people are aware of the different kinds of trafficking there is and how it can look different from the media. A lot of people think that, human trafficking is just being abruptly abducted into a van. But like they mentioned at the Gangs and Human Trafficking event in Fayetteville, that the new type of human trafficking can happen over social media. So these are just some of the things that I think is important to spread awareness to other people who are working in this community. And as again, I mentioned, the community partnerships and collaborations is one of our biggest goals right now, and just promoting the program and being able to have some great referring partners and us function as a referring partner to other agencies. So that is some of the things that we are working on at the moment. And just to provide like a little bit of achievement, I am proud that we have served at least 4 human trafficking survivors since late December. So it's only been a month and we've already serviced 4 individuals, and we've housed 3 out of those 4. So I'm proud to at least, give that news to you all. But thank you so much for having me today. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Amber, thank you so much. And we are glad to know Project Fight is back and look forward to your hopefully being able to expand as you have mentioned as a goal. Thank you for being with us today. Let's see.
Thank you.
There we go. So, I think this is the last anti-trafficking group, and NCICAC, the North Carolina Coalition Against Sexual Assault, of course, mainly deals with sexual assault, and we know that it's certainly intersects with human trafficking. But they do have a human trafficking program coordinator, Courtney Dunkerton, and they do trainings about human trafficking and the intersection. And so I did want to mention them. And also, they are one of the groups, their executive director is one of the people that helped start the North Carolina Coalition Against Human Trafficking many years ago. And so we certainly want to give them thanks for that. As we are closing today, I just wanted to mention a couple of things about North Carolina Stop Human Trafficking. We are a membership organization, and we would be delighted if you would consider joining us. You can go to our website and click on Get Involved, and it will have membership as a part of that. And if you are interested in hearing about cases that happen here in North Carolina and knowing about trainings and just kind of keeping up to date on the anti-human trafficking movement in North Carolina, please feel free to follow us on these social media platforms. I did want to mention that we're going to be doing a webinar next month that is called Sex Trafficking, What's Porn Got to Do with It? And so it is about the relationship between sex trafficking and pornography. And we'll be sending out information about the date and the link and all that soon, but just wanted to kind of give you a preview that that's coming up next month. If you are interested in receiving a training, or if there's anything else that we can do for you, here is our team. And I think it was Parker who said that they are a mighty team of 3. We here at NC Stop Human Trafficking are also a mighty team of 3. And I'm grateful for the partnership of Daryl and Vanessa. So I am just really appreciative of those of you who have been here with us today. I hope that you especially enjoyed hearing from our 5 guests. I think that it's really good when we can hear from people from the actual organization and get a little bit more detailed information. So I'm grateful to them for joining us today, and I'm grateful to you for being here. If you have any questions or if there's anything I can do for you, please contact me. Thank you and have a great day.